An elderly man and woman, seasoned mountaineers with hearts full of adventure, vanished into the icy grip of Mount Everest in 2002, leaving behind a silence that screamed louder than their laughter ever did. For 3 years, the world's highest peak held its secrets tight, offering no clues to their fate, until a weathered bag, slightly buried in the frozen snow, emerged as the one haunting relic that would unravel everything. On a crisp October morning in 2002, the wind howled across Everest's treacherous slopes, carrying with it the fading echoes of Torin and Leora Haskett. Torin, 68, with his silver beard and a lifetime of climbing under his belt, and Leora, 65, his fierce and spirited partner, had set out for what they called one last dance with the mountain. They were no strangers to danger, having conquered peaks across the globe, their bond forged in the thin air of high altitudes. But this time, they didn't come back. Their last known location was a remote camp at 7,000 meters, where they'd pitched their tent amid swirling snow. Friends and family waited anxiously, expecting their usual triumphant return. Hours turned to days, and by the third day, a cold dread settled in. Torin's meticulous planning, every rope checked, every oxygen tank tested, made his disappearance unthinkable. Leora's steady hands, guiding them through storms, added to the mystery. They had a daughter, Maris, back in a small Colorado town who clung to the hope that her parents' expertise would bring them home. But as the sun dipped below the horizon on October 12, 2002, that hope began to fray like an old climbing rope. Maris paced the living room of her parents' modest home, the phone pressed to her ear as she dialed the expedition coordinator in Kathmandu. It was 9 p.m. local time, 24 hours past their expected return. The coordinator's voice was calm but firm. Search teams would be deployed at first light. Maris hung up, her hands trembling, and stared at the framed photo on the mantel. Torin and Leora, grinning in red jackets against a snowy peak, their eyes alight with joy. That morning they'd sent a grainy satellite message, a short video of Leora pointing out a distant ridge to Torin, his laughter crackling through the static. "The mountain's singing today," he'd said, his voice warm. But now the silence was deafening. The search began at dawn, a desperate race against Everest's unforgiving terrain. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their blades slicing through the thin air, while ground teams, Sherpas and seasoned climbers, fanned out across the icy slopes. The mountain mocked their efforts, its crevasses swallowing light, its avalanches burying hope. For 72 hours they found nothing, no footprints, no gear, no sign of the Hasketts. Torin's knowledge of the mountain was legendary. He could read the ice like a map, spotting danger where others saw only beauty. Leora's instincts had saved them from storms before. Yet, the absence of any trace gnawed at the rescuers. By the 5th day, the operation swelled, pulling in international climbers and volunteers. They scoured ridges and camps, their brightly colored gear a stark contrast to the white expanse. But the mountain held firm, its secrets locked in ice. Weeks turned to months, and the official search wound down. The command post at base camp was dismantled, the helicopters grounded, and the news crews packed up. Maris refused to let go. She sold her small art studio to fund private searchers, spending weekends poring over maps, tracing routes her parents might have taken. She walked the trails they loved, her boots crunching on snow, looking for a scrap of fabric or a dropped glove. The case grew cold, filed away in expedition records, but Maris's hope burned on. 3 years later, on a frigid February morning in 2005, the Hasketts' story took a chilling turn. Far from the main climbing routes, in a remote icefall near the western Siabiam, a Nepalese guide named Rajiv Thapa paused during a routine supply run. His eye caught a flash of color beneath a thin layer of snow, a weathered orange backpack, its straps tangled with ice. It wasn't just any bag. It was a high-end mountaineering pack, the kind Torin and Leora carried. Rajiv's heart raced as he brushed away the snow, revealing the faded logo they'd always trusted. The discovery sent a jolt through the small team. This wasn't debris from a careless climber. It was a lifeline to the past. Rajiv radioed base camp, his voice tight with urgency. The bag was carefully extracted, its frozen straps creaking as it was freed. Inside, they found a broken compass, a crumpled map, and a small frost-covered journal. Torin's handwriting scrawled across the pages. The find reignited the case, pulling Maris back into the fray. She flew to Nepal, her eyes red from sleepless nights, clutching the hope that this bag held the answers she'd chased for years. At base camp, experts examined the gear under bright lights. The orange fabric, though faded, retained its structure, defying the expected decay of 3 years in the elements. The journal's ink was smudged but legible, hinting at their final days. Maris read aloud, her voice breaking. Leora's strength is fading. The storm hit hard. We're holding on. The bag wasn't just evidence. It was a cry from the mountain. The investigation shifted, tracing the bag's journey through Everest's icy veins. If you're as hooked as I am, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories like this. Let's uncover the truth together. The question now was clear. Where had this bag been, and what had happened to Torin and Leora in those lost years? The mountain wasn't done revealing its secrets yet. The discovery of the orange backpack sent a ripple of urgency through the weathered walls of base camp, where Maris Haskett stood, her breath visible in the frigid air. The journal pages, brittle and stained, held fragments of Torin's last thoughts, descriptions of a blinding storm, Leora's labored breathing, and a desperate scramble for shelter. The words painted a picture of survival against odds, but the bag's condition raised questions no one could ignore. Forensic experts from Kathmandu, led by Dr. Anil Sharma, descended on the site, their gloved hands moving with precision over the frozen relic. The orange nylon, though weathered, showed minimal UV degradation for 3 years under Everest's relentless sun. Dr. Sharma's team ran tests, comparing the fabric to samples exposed to controlled conditions. The results were startling. The pack had seen only months of direct sunlight, not years. The stitching held strong, the foam padding inside dry and intact, free of the mold or rot expected from prolonged exposure. It was as if the bag had been preserved in a hidden cocoon, shielded from the mountain's wrath. This revelation turned the investigation upside down. The icefall where Rajiv found the bag wasn't its final resting place. It was a drop point, delivered by some unseen force. Dr. Sharma hypothesized a natural event, pointing to avalanche records from late 2004. A massive slide, triggered by a rare warm spell, had roared through the western CWM, reshaping the landscape. The team pored over satellite imagery and weather data, tracing the avalanche's path. The simulation showed a powerful surge of snow and ice, capable of carrying a heavy pack and wedging it into the crevice where it was found. The bag had been torn from a hidden shelter, carried miles by the frozen torrent. Maris clutched the journal, her knuckles white, as the new theory took shape. The search shifted from the ground to the ice, following the avalanche's ghostly trail back into Everest's heart. Ranger Prakash Gurung, a veteran of the 2002 search, assembled a lean team of elite climbers and glaciologists. They weren't hunting footprints but seeking a refuge, a cave, an overhang, a pocket of stillness where Torin and Leora might have clung to life. Armed with 3D terrain maps and the avalanche's projected flow, they trekked into the Lhotse face, a steep, icy wall notorious for its hidden dangers. The air thinned with every step, the wind biting at their faces. For 2 days, they probed crevasses and ice caves, finding only emptiness, until the 3rd day when a sharp-eyed Sherpa named Tashi spotted a shadow in the ice. It was a narrow fissure, barely visible beneath a crust of snow, its entrance sealed by time. The team hacked through, revealing a shallow ice cave, its walls glistening with frost. Inside, Prakash's flashlight caught a glint of red. Torin's jacket, crumpled against the back wall. The scene was hauntingly still. Torin's skeletal remains lay curled around Leora's, their bones locked in a final embrace. A medical examiner noted fractures in Torin's ribs and Leora's skull, consistent with a fall or avalanche impact. Nearby, a rusted ice axe and a torn sleeping bag told a story of survival cut short. Maris arrived by helicopter, her sobs echoing in the cave as she knelt beside her parents. The cave had been their sanctuary, a desperate bid to wait out the storm that claimed them. But something else caught the team's eye, a small metal object half buried in the ice. It was a climbing piton, its surface etched with initials, JK. The piton didn't belong to the Haskets. It was newer, its metal less corroded, suggesting it had been driven into the ice recently, long after 2002. Prakash's brow furrowed. This wasn't just a tragedy, it hinted at another presence. The investigation pivoted, the piton a silent clue to an unresolved mystery. Maris demanded answers, her voice steady despite the tears. The cave held her parents' end, but the piton suggested someone else had been there. If you're feeling this twist, hit that like button and subscribe. We're diving deeper into the unknown. The team combed the cave, finding a faint trail of disturbed ice leading outward. The piton's initials pointed to a climber, possibly a guide or a rogue expedition member. Prakash recalled a 2004 report of an unauthorized climb in the same sector, led by a man named Joran Kessler, a reclusive American known for skirting regulations. Kessler had vanished from records after that season, his whereabouts a mystery. The piton's placement, near the cave's entrance, suggested he'd anchored there, perhaps to explore or scavenge. The Haskets' gear, including the orange pack, might have been disturbed, triggering the avalanche that moved it. Maris pressed for a full investigation, her grief fueling a relentless pursuit. The team traced Kessler's last known movements, finding a Kathmandu contact who'd seen him with a haul of climbing equipment in early 2005. The pieces were aligning, but the truth remained elusive. Had Kessler stumbled upon the Haskets' shelter? Was he a witness or something worse? The mountain held its breath, waiting to reveal more. The discovery of the piton with JK etched into its surface sent a shiver through the ice cave, where Maris Haskett stood frozen, her parents' remains a silent testament to their final struggle. Ranger Prakash Gurung's mind raced as he studied the metal spike, its clean lines a stark contrast to the ancient ice around it. The initials pointed to Joran Kessler, a name that stirred uneasy memories among the climbing community. Kessler, a wiry American in his late 30s, had a reputation for pushing boundaries, often leading unsanctioned climbs up Everest's lesser-known routes. His 2004 expedition had raised eyebrows, but no one had connected it to the Haskets until now. The piton's recent placement suggested Kessler had been in the cave, possibly after the 2002 storm that claimed Torin and Leora. Maris's voice cut through the silence, demanding answers. What was he doing here? The question hung heavy, fueling a renewed search that would peel back layers of Everest's secrets. Prakash assembled a team to retrace Kessler's steps, blending glaciologists with veteran Sherpas who knew the mountain's moods. They followed the disturbed ice trail from the cave, navigating a labyrinth of crevasses and seracs under a sky bruised with clouds. The trail led to a higher ridge, where they found a makeshift camp, tattered tarps, a rusted stove, and a journal with Kessler's jagged handwriting. The entries, dated March 2005, spoke of a find in a lower cave, a red jacket and bones, and a hurried retreat after an avalanche rumbled nearby. The timeline fit. Kessler had discovered the Haskets' shelter, perhaps looting gear before the snowslide moved the orange pack. But why leave so abruptly? The journal hinted at fear, mentioning voices and something watching. Maris clutched the pages, her hope warring with a growing dread. The piton wasn't just a clue. It was a thread to a darker story. The investigation shifted to Kathmandu, where Prakash tracked Kessler's last movements. A bar owner recalled a nervous man matching his description, unloading climbing gear in April 2005 before vanishing. Bank records showed a sudden withdrawal, and a shipping manifest listed equipment sent to a remote village in Tibet. The trail was faint, but it led the team across the border, where they found Kessler's abandoned shack. Inside, amid moldy rations and cracked ice axes, was a photo. Kessler grinning beside the orange pack, its straps still intact. The image was a gut punch, suggesting he'd taken the Haskets' gear after their deaths. Maris's fury ignited. This wasn't just survival. It was desecration. The team scoured the shack, finding a faded map marked with the cave's location and a note. Too much risk. Leaving it. Kessler had fled, leaving the Haskett's story buried until the avalanche exposed it. Back on Everest, the team returned to the cave, now a crime scene under Nepal's jurisdiction. Forensic experts dusted the piton for prints, finding smudges too degraded to identify. The orange pack, re-examined, revealed a hidden pocket with Torin's wedding ring, missed in the initial sweep. It was a personal loss turned evidence fueling Maris's resolve. Dr. Sharma's team analyzed ice samples, confirming the avalanche's path and timing, linking it to Kessler's retreat. The theory solidified. Kessler had stumbled upon the Haskett's bodies, taken the pack, and fled when the mountain shifted. But a new question emerged. Had he caused their fall? The cave's entrance showed signs of a recent collapse, possibly triggered by his climbing. Maris demanded justice, her voice steady as she faced Prakash. He can't get away with this. The search widened, a manhunt blending with the mountain's mystery. If you're on the edge of your seat, hit that like button and subscribe. We're getting closer to the truth. The pursuit of Kessler took the team to Lhasa, where whispers of a rogue climber surfaced. A Tibetan trader recalled a foreigner matching Kessler's description, trading gear for cash in 2005 before disappearing into the Himalayas. The trail grew cold, but a satellite phone record pinged a remote valley in 2006. Prakash organized a final expedition, trekking through yak trails and prayer flag-draped passes. In a crumbling monastery they found him, Jorn Kessler, gaunt and gray, living as a hermit. He didn't resist as they approached, his eyes hollow with guilt. Through a translator he confessed, he'd found the Hasketts alive in the storm's aftermath, injured but breathing. Torin had begged for help, offering the pack as payment. Kessler, fearing exposure for his illegal climb, took the gear and left them, triggering a small collapse as he fled. The avalanche that followed buried his shame. Maris listened, tears streaming as Kessler's words confirmed her parents' final plea. The confession was a bittersweet victory, closing the case but opening a wound. Justice loomed, but the mountain had already claimed its due. Kessler's confession echoed through the crumbling monastery, where Maris Haskett stood, her face a mask of grief and resolve. The translator's voice trembled as he relayed the final words. Jorn Kessler had abandoned Torin and Leora in their weakest hour, taking the orange pack and fleeing as the cave trembled under his hasty retreat. The small collapse he triggered had sealed their fate, the avalanche that followed burying his cowardice beneath tons of ice. Maris's hands shook as she held the photo of Kessler with the pack, a tangible betrayal of her parents' trust. Prakash Gurung placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, his weathered face etched with sympathy. The confession was a breakthrough, but it left a bitter taste. Justice for the Hasketts would come at a cost, and the mountain's silence still held pieces of the puzzle. The team secured Kessler, his frail frame offering little resistance, and prepared to hand him over to Nepalese authorities. Back in Kathmandu, the case unfolded under a media storm. News outlets dubbed it Everest's Forgotten Betrayal, with headlines splashing across screens worldwide. Maris faced the cameras, her voice breaking as she spoke of her parents' love for the mountain and the man who'd left them to die. The orange pack, now a symbol of their struggle, was displayed in a press conference, its frostbitten straps a silent witness. Forensic teams re-examined the cave, finding minute traces of Kessler's gear, rope fibers and a boot print, confirming his presence. Dr. Sharma's ice core analysis pinpointed the collapse's timing, aligning with Kessler's journal entries. The evidence was airtight. Kessler's illegal climb had intersected with the Hasketts' tragedy, turning a survival story into a crime. Maris pushed for charges, her determination unshaken despite the emotional toll. The Nepalese government agreed, citing violations of climbing regulations and potential manslaughter, given Kessler's failure to aid the injured. The trial began in early 2006, a somber affair held in a Kathmandu courtroom packed with climbers and journalists. Kessler, defended by a public attorney, claimed panic had driven his actions, arguing the storm left him no choice. But the prosecution painted a different picture. A man prioritizing his own skin over 2 lives, his looting of the pack a calculated act. The journal, with its cryptic voices note, was scrutinized. Some speculated it hinted at guilt or hallucination. Others saw it as an excuse. Maris testified, her words raw. They trusted the mountain, and he betrayed that trust. The court heard from Sherpas who'd worked with the Haskets, their praise for Torin and Leora's skill underscoring the senselessness of their end. After a week, the verdict came. Kessler was found guilty of negligent homicide and illegal climbing, sentenced to 15 years in a Nepalese prison. Maris exhaled, a mix of relief and sorrow as the gavel fell. The legal chapter closed, but her journey was far from over. If you're moved by this turn, hit that like button and subscribe. There's more to uncover. Maris returned to Colorado, the orange pack in her possession, a bittersweet heirloom. She opened it on her kitchen table, sifting through its contents with trembling hands. Alongside the broken compass and map, she found a small locket, Leora's, containing a faded photo of the family from the 1990s. Tears fell as she traced their faces, a reminder of the love that had driven them to Everest. The journal revealed more, its final entry a scribbled plea. Maris, forgive us. The storm won. It broke her heart, yet fueled her mission. She founded the Haskett Foundation, raising funds to improve Everest safety, better shelters, training for guides, and support for families of the lost. The Foundation's first project was a memorial plaque at base camp, engraved with Torin and Leora's names, unveiled in 2007 amid a quiet ceremony. Climbers paused to pay respects, the mountain's wind carrying their whispers. But the story didn't end there. In 2008, a Sherpa clearing debris near the Lhotse face found a frozen glove, Torin's, its lining embroidered with his initials. It was too high for the cave, suggesting he'd fallen farther than first thought, perhaps trying to signal for help. The find reopened questions. Had Kessler's collapse pushed them to a fatal move? Maris funded a new expedition, but the ice yielded no further clues. The glove became part of the memorial, a symbol of their fight. Kessler, meanwhile, served his sentence in silence, his health fading. In 2012, he died in prison, leaving a letter for Maris, apologizing, claiming he'd heard their voices in his dreams. She burned it, choosing to honor her parents' legacy over his regret. The Haskets' tale became legend, a cautionary whisper on Everest slopes, their bag a relic of love and loss. Maris, now in her 40s, continues her work, ensuring no family faces the same void. The mountain keeps its secrets, but their story endures. The frozen glove embroidered with Torin Hasket's initials lay in Maris's hands as she stood at the base camp memorial in 2008, the wind tugging at her coat. The discovery had stirred the ashes of her grief, reigniting questions about her parents' final moments. The glove, found high on the Lhotse face, hinted at a desperate climb or fall, a last-ditch effort to escape the cave where Joran Kessler had left them. Maris's foundation, now a beacon for Everest safety, funded a meticulous re-examination of the site, but the ice remained stubbornly silent, offering no new bones or gear. The glove became a sacred relic, added to the plaque alongside Torin and Leora's names, its presence a quiet testament to their struggle. Climbers paused at the memorial, their murmurs blending with the mountain's breath, as Maris vowed to keep their story alive. The Haskett Foundation grew, its reach extending beyond Nepal to train guides worldwide, ensuring no one faced Everest unprepared. Back in Colorado, Maris transformed her parents' home into a hub for the foundation, its walls lined with maps and photos of their climbs. The orange pack sat on a shelf, its strap still bearing the scars of ice, a constant reminder of their love and loss. She sifted through the journal again, finding a sketch Torin had drawn, a jagged ridge he'd labeled Hope's Edge, perhaps their intended escape route. The drawing fueled a new expedition in 2009, led by Prakash Gurung and a team of glaciologists. They scaled the Lhotse face, guided by the sketch, their ropes cutting through fresh snow. At 7,500 meters, they found a narrow ledge, its ice scarred by old crampons. Embedded in the wall was another piton, its metal worn but unmarked, suggesting an earlier anchor point. The ledge offered a vantage point over the cave, hinting that Torin and Leora had tried to climb out, only to be thwarted by the storm or Kessler's collapse. Maris joined via satellite link, her voice cracking as Prakash described the find. It was a piece of their fight, but the full truth remained elusive. The expedition turned to technology, deploying drones to map the upper slopes. One drone, caught in a gust, crashed near a crevasse, revealing a glint of metal, a rusted oxygen canister, its valve stamped with the Haskett's expedition logo. The canister was too high for the cave, suggesting they'd pushed upward before the end. Rescue teams rappelled down, finding a small overhang where the canister had rested, its ice preserving faint boot prints, Leora's size experts confirmed. The overhang held a torn mitten and a frozen ration pack, evidence of a brief shelter. Maris wept, imagining her mother's last stand, holding out hope as the cold closed in. The finds painted a picture of resilience. Torin and Leora, injured but determined, had climbed toward safety, only to be undone by nature and Kessler's cowardice. The Foundation used the data to push for better high-altitude shelters, saving lives in future seasons. Meanwhile, Kessler's letter, burned but not forgotten, lingered in Maris's mind. His claim of hearing voices gnawed at her. Guilt? Hallucination, or something more? In 2010, a psychic hired by a curious donor visited the cave, claiming to sense two spirits and a third presence. The team dismissed it, but the idea stuck, fueling online forums where climbers speculated about Everest's haunted reputation. Maris focused on facts, not folklore, channeling the mystery into her work. The Foundation's efforts paid off in 2011, when a new shelter at 7,000 meters, named Haskett Haven, was dedicated. Climbers hailed it as a lifeline, its insulated walls a stark contrast to the cave's icy tomb. Maris stood at the opening, the orange pack beside her, as Sherpas raised the plaque. The mountain's silence felt less oppressive now, her parents' legacy etched into its slopes. Yet the story wasn't fully closed. In 2013, a climber found a cracked ski pole near Hope's Edge, its grip worn smooth, Torin's by its custom length. The find suggested he'd fought to the end, perhaps shielding Leora as they fell. Maris funded a final sweep, but the ice yielded nothing more. The pole joined the memorial, a symbol of their unyielding spirit. Kessler's death in 2012 had ended his chapter, but Maris's journey evolved. She wrote a book, Echoes of Everest, blending the journal's words with her own, its sales funding more shelters. The Haskett's tale became a pilgrimage point, drawing climbers who left tokens, stones, flags at the plaque. Maris, now in her 50s, visits annually, her graying hair a mirror of Torin's. The mountain keeps its secrets, but her parents' fight echoes through every saved life. If you're inspired by their strength, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's keep their story alive.